I saw a UFO, that's all. I looked across a field, and I saw something glinting, and it was a large silver object.
This is Kristina Florence. She says she would like to believe her UFO experience was just a fantasy.
I'd love it if it was a fantasy. It would be much easier to deal with. If I could say, yes, I'm crazy. This is all not real.
She came to Hopkins reluctantly to explore something she's not ready to accept. Her memory of seeing a UFO, a large silver object, as a child, twice.
Those are my conscious recollections, and that's all I can say really happened. However, under hypnosis, surprisingly enough, other things came out which indicate that maybe some sort of person or people from another world came and took my sister and I and sort of looked us over and did a few experiments. It's sort of like a dummy birth. It's like fake, but the baby's real, and they're real, and I'm real. But
you are listening to an audio tape of one of Chris's hypnosis sessions with Budd Hopkins. Under his probing, she and other women told of being shown babies by aliens. The implication? That the babies were theirs, the result of reproductive experiments conducted by the space creatures, something Chris doesn't want to believe.
If Budd wants to conclude that, if people reading Budd's book feel that that's conclusive, then that's one thing. But I, myself, do not want to believe that any of this has any connection.
Hopkins wasn't sure about some of the things he was hearing either, so he started consulting experts. Dr. John Berger is a practicing obstetrician-gynecologist who has interviewed some of Hopkins' subjects and listened to tapes of hypnotic sessions and the medical techniques described.
I was intrigued with how much sense it all made. It was so clinical and so precise that it made me jolt and think, perhaps this really was true.
It's like a numbness.
2020 found an expert, too, Dr. Martin Reiser, a psychologist and hypnosis consultant with the Los Angeles Police Department. He pointed out that hypnosis is not a lie detector, that under hypnosis, a subject can believe something is true, that is not. We asked him to review some tapes of Budd Hopkins' hypnosis sessions with Chris and Connie. Does Budd Hopkins seem to be exerting undue influence on his people?
I think that what he really communicates to the subject is, yes, these things do happen, and what you're experiencing is very common. And I think in that respect, it communicates to the individual that there's no question that these things exist.
These cases are so outrageous and the person feels so uncomfortable talking about them that unless you assure that person by your manner that you believe them, you will not get the story.
I think that much of what was felt and perceived by these two subjects could be explained in rational, reasonable ways that don't have to involve UFOs or UFO experiences.
For instance?
Well, for instance, childhood memories that get mixed up with later memories, dream material.
You've now written 2 books on the subject. Do you consider yourself an unbiased investigator?
I'm one of the few who actually has the information to be objective. The idea of total objectivity is always a myth anyway, I think, for anyone. I'm not sitting there like a kind of a totally neutral surface against which everything is bouncing off. I do have some sort of obvious rapport with the person.
Hi, Budd. Hopkins also points out that his investigations go beyond hypnosis, that he interviews friends and relatives and other witnesses, and even sends samples of earth and grass allegedly touched by alien craft to laboratories. He's even noted a connection among scars found on supposed UFO abductees. Theoretically, evidence of alien examinations and experiments. But Hopkins says he wouldn't be doing any of this if someone else, like the government, were. Remember, in 1969, the Air Force shut down the only publicized federal investigation into UFOs, Project Blue Book. But a number of documents obtained by government critics under the Freedom of Information Act suggest that investigations, not part of the Blue Book system, may have continued under such code names as MJ-12 and Project Aquarius. In a number of books and articles, critics have charged that the government is covering up UFO sightings and related information under the guise of national security. We asked the Air Force to comment on these charges. They refused. And while the controversy goes on, Budd Hopkins continues his independent investigations of those people who claim to have been abducted.
These are suffering people. They're not crazy. Of course, what is at issue is whether the UFO abduction experiences are real. And my idea is that simply that the evidence is so powerful that someone has got to say, okay, I'll look into it, if not just to try to blow it out of the water.